the door for the devourer to actually attack. And Ecclesiastes 10:8 says that he that breaks the edge, the serpent will bite. That means if you break your covering, and paying your tithes is like you assuring your finances. So why should I pay tithes? To avoid death or destruction. So if you look at the life of Ananias and Sapphira, they pledged to actually give God is to give God the income from selling a land. But what did they do? They kept a part. And what happened? They lost their lives. So why should I pay my tithes? To ensure God trusts us with the true riches of life. So if God sees that the little finances you have, you are not consistent about paying your tithes, how can he give you the true riches? How can he increase your funds? When you cannot pay tithes on 50,000, is it when he gives you $5 million that you pay tithes? Of course, you will not pay tithes when he does that. So why should I pay tithes? To open the windows of heaven over my life. So if you look at Malachi 3:10 that I mentioned earlier, and also it affirms that we trust God with our lives. It's an affirmation that we actually trust God with our lives. So facts about tithing. So it is important as believers that we have the mentality that is 90% of our income that is primarily our income. So before the money comes, let's have it at the back of our mind that 10% is to God, but 90% is what? Is ours, which is a good percentage. So 90% is to us and 10% is to God. So we have to always have the consciousness of that. So if I receive free 5,000 naira, I know that 10% of the 5,000 is for God and what? And the remaining one is for myself. Also, there's a need for us to create scale of preference as believers. Even as an unbeliever, you should have scale of preference on how you spend your money. You should have like a percentage of a certain percentage that you spend on certain things. So we should have a scale of preference, and it's very, very important that we place what? Our tithes as number one on our scale of preference. Let's have the consciousness that I do not spend out of my money or any money that comes into my hand when I have not actually paid my tithes. It starts from there. It starts from there. So we should create scale of preference, and we should put our tithes as number one. Also, spending all your income on arising expenses shows you do not trust God. So indeed, if you trust God, so I was talking to somebody and the person was saying, when I buy skincare, when I buy hair, when I do this one, when I do that, I see that I'm left with nothing. I'm like, okay. So where did you place God in all of this, your calculation? So it is very, very important that we place God superior. So in all of our expenses, yes, we know that we have to pay we have to pay certain amounts, we have expenses, we have to pay bills, we have to pay school fees. But in all of it, we have to put tithes as number one. Because even the many ones, God can actually increase what is left in your hand. Also, we as believers, we claim Abrahamic blessings, but we are not willing to pay the price that Abraham paid to enjoy the blessings. So we always say Abraham's blessings are what? Are mine. But really, are we willing to pay the price that Abraham paid? Abraham was somebody that was sacrificial. He was sacrificial towards God and also to men. So it is very important that we imbibe this culture. So why must we pay tithes to church? Because I have some people who would ask, why must I pay my tithes to church? What are they even using my tithes to do? Really, what are they using it to do? So the first one is that God's instructions supersedes any reason you feel we shouldn't pay tithes. That means even 2 Corinthians 10:6 says that he would judge the disobedience when your obedience is complete. That means God will judge when you yourself, you have actually paid your price, like you've actually played your role as a believer. So we should not dwell on, okay, what are they going to use my money to do? Or what are they spending the money to do? It's not your business. The most important thing is that you should obey God's promises. And also, if you look at the life of Eli's children, yes, they were doing things that were wrong concerning the proceeds that people brought to the house of God. But the Lord actually judged. And the people did not just dwell on the fact that they were misbehaving and they were not bringing. So as believers, we should not dwell on the fact that even if they are not using it for even if, which I know that we are using it for the right purposes, even if they are not using it, God will obviously judge when our obedience is complete. And it is not our responsibility to monitor what our tithes are being used for. We are paying our tithe to God and not to man. So in conclusion, tithing is an instruction from God, and our adamance to comply to this instruction can make our finances an accosting. Also, it can open the doors for devourers. Like I mentioned, Ecclesiastes 10:8 says that he that breaks the edge, the serpent will bite. That means the devourer will come and pack things from your life. Also, it can actually lead to destructions of any kind. It might be your finances, it can be anything. Growing up, anytime maybe something happens to somebody just say, but God, I paid my tithe. I'm always like, I don't understand. But really, it's like an assurance for you as a believer. Also, it will help you it will hinder, not paying your tithe will hinder the blessings of God over your life. And most importantly, it shows that we do not have faith in God. And Hebrews 11 verse 6 says that without faith, what? It is impossible to please the Lord. That means faith is needed as a believer. I pray that the Lord will help us to obey his commandments in the name of Jesus. Thank you for listening.